And you are on.
We're on. Okay, good. Well, it's on, everyone. Great to see people I hadn't seen last term and people, old friends from last term. I suppose I should just say a word before we start about what
and introduce yourself too.
Introduce myself as well. Okay, I'm Michael Harris. And
Rabbi Dr. Michael Harris, but he wouldn't say that.
Okay, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that.
Diane
so
Harris.
I was a communal rabbi with a kind of part-time academic interest, and now I've kind of swapped round, but kind of more or less lost the communal rabbinate bit. Don't mind doing the odd speaking and shiur, etc., as long as you don't subject me to kiddush. By far the most stressful thing in the rabbinate, where everyone comes up to you and says, "It's my grandmother's say for 3 weeks on Monday." So I can't write, etc. Anyway, here in Israel, I'm a research fellow in the philosophy department at the University of Haifa, and I particularly like to work at the intersection of Jewish tradition, al-Makorot, and Torah, and contemporary philosophy, particularly contemporary analytic philosophy, which is the style of philosophy which they study and teach in universities in North America and in Britain, as opposed to the continental tradition, which is a different kind of philosophical endeavor. And within philosophy, I'm most interested in philosophy of religion and in ethics, moral philosophy. And this 10-week course focuses on ethics, or more precisely on the interface between ethics and the Makoran Jewish tradition. I'm starting with the topic of moral luck. This is the first of 3 sessions on moral luck. This session stands alone, so if you want to hear the good stuff, you'll have to come back for the next 2 sessions at least, but hopefully this will be comprehensible on its own. And then we will get into other issues, for example, the famous trolleyology, which is if you have a trolley going towards 5 people and it looks like it's going to kill them, and you can flick a switch and just kill one person as well. What should you do? What is the famous debate in contemporary moral philosophy and old moral philosophy? How does that tie in with al-Makorot, etc.? And also I plan during the course to look at some what philosophers call meta-ethical issues. That's when you take a step back, or meta above, and you look at ethics from the outside and you say, well, where does it come from? When we talk about moral obligations, are they something objective? Are they subjective? How does God's command relate to them? Certainly the Torah says something that's ethical. Is that just ethical because the Torah says it, or would it have been even if we hadn't had the revelation at Har Sinai, etc.? So a mixture of issues. And my aim is to make it, to stretch you, to try and make it at a level which is challenging, but also to be accessible and comprehensible. So if I'm not accessible or comprehensible at any point, you can stop me, say that doesn't make any sense. Okay, so beginning with moral luck, and this is a good topic to start with, I think, because intuitively it's something that we can easily relate to. So what is moral luck? In 1976, a pair of articles came out, both entitled Moral Luck. One was by Bernard Williams, who was a professor of philosophy at Cambridge, very well-known moral philosopher. And the other one was by Thomas Nagel, who was a very well-known American philosopher. And this pair of articles spawned a massive literature, which is still really a mini industry, which is still flourishing to this day. The basic idea is something which we come across all the time and is very, very familiar. Let's talk about Nagel's article, because that's a broader survey. And Nagel identifies, I've just put the on for those who have access to the sheet. By the way, the sheet you can see is 1 page of philosophy and 1.5 of Torah, or 2 of Torah, which is about right. It's a good division. But I would say they're not entirely separate. The whole thing, what I'm trying to do is to show how the two traditions can fight on each other. So if we understand, when we look at our Makorot through the eyes of moral philosophy, we can understand it more deeply. Often we can see the richness of our tradition, how issues which are being discussed in contemporary philosophy were anticipated sometimes millennia ago in our own tradition, and also the other way around. Sometimes if we have the rigor of the philosophical distinctions and analysis, then we can understand what our Makorot are after. Okay, so Nagel in his article Moral Luck identifies 4 kinds of moral luck. That means luck coming into moral judgment and affecting it. Clearer when we have the example. So number 1, circumstantial. The circumstances into which we are born and many kinds of conditions that we live in are beyond our control. We don't fix, we don't determine, we don't choose when we're born. And yet they have a massive effect on the moral challenges which face us. And so a stark example, a Nazi who was born in 1900 and did terrible things during the Shoah, had he or she been born in 1850 or in 1950, may have lived a morally blameless life, may even have lived a morally good life. It's just so that is we're going to judge that person's whole life as being full of evil, as being a very bad way of living a life, and yet there's a large element of luck involved, beyond the person's control. Control being an absolutely key concept here. Beyond it, we don't choose when we're born. We don't choose when we're born. I often think, well, it's just occasionally, you have to excuse me, occasionally I slip back into pulpit rabbi mode. So let me just slip back from it. And we get to be born now. Isn't it amazing? You know, I was born a nanosecond after the Holocaust in the 60s. I hasten to add, unless you think it was the 40s or the 50s. My wife even later, but it's later than me. And what a time! What a time to be born! I think, and to be able to live part of one's life in the state of just phenomenal. And the opposite is so many people in our history were born at times where we're faced with terrible persecutions. It's something we have no control over whatsoever, and yet it heavily affects the way people judge us morally and the challenges which we face. So that's circumstantial moral luck. Second, constitutive, which means so much about us is not up to us. So our abilities, talents, personality, characteristics, traits, dispositions, we know have a great deal to do with our genes, with our upbringing, with environmental considerations. And those are beyond our control. In that sense, they are a matter of luck. And of course, we know we can work on ourselves, etc. But the starting point is that we have a lot of what we have is incredible. There's very little we can do about it. Right? So when I was at Judith and I flew from Greece, from Rhodes to Israel, and we were in the back seat, a beautiful flight. There you go, along the Mediterranean in the morning. We're in the back seat, and it says, if you're on the back seat, it's a notice that says, in the event of an emergency, you are responsible for it. And I'm thinking, like, if they're going to take all the people on this flight and down to 10-year-old kids, like, they're going to do better than me. That's completely impractical, completely flappy in a crisis. Worst person to that. So I work on myself, but there's the answer. There's not much one can do, and that can come into spheres which affect morality. They affect morality, and they're luck. They're beyond our control. That's constitutive moral luck. Third type, causal moral luck, which is the idea that our will itself. Of course, we came across this in the problem of evil. Of course, for those who were with us last term, and many, obviously you'll be familiar with it from many other contexts. Free will, it's absolutely foundational belief for us. But There are challenges to it, of course. There's still a hotly debated issue in contemporary philosophy. Do we have free will or do we not have free will? Our will itself, some philosophers will claim, is subject to causes beyond our control. And when we will to do something, then it's not necessarily free. Again, our tradition insists that we do have free will, but for those people who argue, many philosophers do, that we don't, then again the will is affected by moral luck, and we're judging people for using their will to choose to do bad when it was beyond their apparently beyond their control. And that's an area, by the way, when everyone's got 50 years, we need some work on that in Jewish philosophy. We need an extensive systematic treatment of the challenges to free will. And there is a lot of good philosophical argument for free will, but we need it from the Jewish perspective, right? And the fourth and final type is, and the one that we're going to focus on, is called in the philosophical literature resultant moral luck. Luck in the way things turn out. The way things turn out beyond our control will affect the moral assessment of our moral assessment of ourselves and other people's moral assessment of us. So here is the extract on the sheet. Does it start the truck driver? Because I've got a sheet, a small sheet with cheat notes.
Okay.
It starts the same thing, the truck driver. Right. So Nagel says, let's move this down a bit. Thanks very much. So you see, I'm trying to stop a plane crashing by doing this.
It's no one's hurt in this story. Sorry.
Just listen.
Okay, so here's Nagel's example of resultant moral luck. The truck driver who accidentally runs over a child, if he is entirely without fault, will feel terrible about his role in the event, will not have to reproach himself. Therefore, this example of agent regret, that means regret by the person who caused the accident, is not yet a case of moral bad luck. So this is an idea based on Williams' agent regret that Nagel introduces here. And the core idea, it's a good way into resultant moral luck. The core idea is that the truck driver who does nothing wrong, is driving carefully and check the brakes and everything else, and God forbid knocks somebody over, will feel terrible about the event in a way which no one else will. And this isn't anything yet to do with moral responsibility. There's no moral blame attached. He doesn't blame himself, the driver. He didn't do anything wrong. Nobody else blames him. The police interview him and there's nothing to prosecute for. He did everything right. But still, if he is a normal, decent person, he will feel very different, even from the friend who was next to him in the cab of the truck. To translate for truck driver, by the way, we call that lorry driver. So very different from anybody else. That's called agent regret. We have a special relationship psychologically with what we do. So that's not yet moral luck. But now let's imagine. Sorry, Williams has a nice quote here. There's something special about his relation to this happening, something which cannot merely be eliminated by the consideration that it was not his fault. Yeah, if this truck driver's a decent person, however much we say to him, you did everything well, it's absolutely not your fault, he's still going to feel bad about it. Okay, Nagel continues. However, if the driver was guilty of even a minor degree of negligence, failing to have his brakes checked recently, for example, then if that negligence contributes to the death of the child, he will not merely feel terrible, he will blame himself for the death. And what makes this an example of moral luck, as a result of moral luck in the way things turn out, is that he would have to blame himself only slightly for the negligence itself if no situation arose which required him to brake suddenly and violently to avoid hitting a child. Yet the negligence is the same in both cases, and the driver has no control over whether a child will run into his path. So the driver could have been equally negligent, not checked the brakes, driven too fast, taken his eye off the road, and it could be, as no doubt happens in most instances of this kind of driving, thank God, nothing happens. Nothing happens. But whether a child is to come into the road at the wrong moment is entirely beyond the control of the driver. And yet, our reaction to the driver and the driver's reaction to themselves is very, very different, depending on whether they had good luck or bad luck in how things turned out. The same is true, Nagel continues, at higher levels of negligence. If someone has had too much to drink and his car swerves onto the sidewalk, which we call a pavement in English, he can count himself morally lucky. If someone said it's very literal American, it's a sidewalk, walk along the side, yeah. Anyway. Eyeglasses.
They don't
Eyeglasses, right,
eyeglasses.
Eyeglasses.
It's simple.
He can count himself morally lucky if there are no pedestrians in its path. If there were, he would be to blame for their deaths and would probably be prosecuted for manslaughter. But if he hurts no one, although his recklessness is exactly the same, he's guilty of a far less serious legal offence and will certainly reproach himself and be reproached by others much less severely. So not only in moral terms, but also in most legal systems, Australia too, there in the courts.
That's true. People do say you were lucky for, and it's the exact same conduct. It's
Yeah.
Right.
true what you're saying.
But
Right,
you
yeah.
have a higher duty of care. You have
Yeah.
a higher duty of care to be in control of your vehicle
Yeah.
at all times.
Yes, sure.
So in almost every case, you are going to be assessed some degree of negligence, regardless of what you
Right.
feel or not.
I guess that's-
You have a
Right.
higher duty of care.
Yeah, I do care. That's true. But if an accident happens, then the ramifications will be worse. So I'm just in pure legal terms.
Yes.
You're likely to have a stiffer penalty from the law.
But,
Yeah.
You're likely to feel worse.
but your point's exactly right. Your duty of care is exactly the same, irrespective of anybody coming out.
Yeah.
At you. You have your
Yeah.
duty to take any reasonable, to foresee reasonably foreseeable things and act
Yeah.
to solve it. So
Yeah.
100%, it's true. It's
It's true.
and
Yeah.
but depending on whether there's a child or not, you've committed a crime or
Yeah.
not committed a crime.
Yeah. So luck comes right into the legal system and into moral blame. Okay, let's take another example. Legal example, Nagel continues. The penalty for attempted murder is less than that for successful murder. However similar the intentions and motives of the assailant may be in the two cases. His degree of culpability can depend, it would seem, on whether the victim happened to be wearing a bulletproof vest or whether a bird flew into the path of the bullet matters beyond his control. So again, the basic example, murder, attempted murder, someone gets less of a jail sentence for attempted murder in many legal systems when it was a bird flew in the way, and it's just complete luck. And the intent, what we think is morally important intuitively, which is what's going on inside. In mens rea, I call that mens rea law, bad intent, evil intention. What's going on inside, the intentions, the motives, the evil character expressing itself is the same in both cases. And why are we allowing something beyond a person's control, luck, to determine how we morally judge someone, how we legally judge someone? So factors beyond our control, luck. And yet we have a strong intuition that people should not be responsible for are not responsible for what's beyond their control. And yet in our moral practice and our legal practice, we do judge people more or less harshly based on luck, on what's beyond their control. There's a nice quote here from Adam Smith, The Theory of Moral Sentiments. That's it. And once again, sorry, thanks very much. Adam Smith, who was a famous economist, but he was a philosopher as well. The Theory of Moral Sentiments. Nice quote from Adam Smith. While in abstract and general terms, there is nobody who does not agree that results beyond the control of the agent should not affect moral assessment. Yet when you come to particular cases, the actual consequences which happen to proceed from any action have a very great effect upon our sentiments concerning its merit or demerit. Yeah, lovely. It's nothing like good 18th century English prose. Hume is another one, David Hume, beautifully clear writing. So, does that, and I guess that matches people's intuitions that much. If you asked you in the abstract, should we blame people? Should we punish them for things which are beyond their control? As most people would feel, no, of course not. It's not fair. It's not fair. we think of Rambam in the fifth paragraph of Hilchot Teshuvah. So I said, Shofet Kol Ha'aretz Lo Ya'asem, if Hashem didn't give us free will and we've got no choice about whether to do, then with what justification do we get punished? Shofet Kol Ha'aretz Lo Ya'asem Mishpat, the judge of all the world, not act justly without us having control and freedom. How is it fair to judge us? And yet, I guess our intuitions are, at least before we thought too much about it, that we will think that the truck driver who has been negligent and caused the terrible accident is worthy of deeper condemnation than the truck driver who didn't. I guess we're challenged about it, and we say, well, why? We might think that they were just lucky and they are as bad, but we don't do that. We don't do it in a legal system, and we would probably, if we were the truck driver, God forbid, we would feel very different. Okay, so that's a puzzle. It's a puzzle, and so that has spawned the whole industry on moral luck. Why is that? Why is it that it seems intuitively sound to say that people are not responsible for what's beyond their control, and yet our moral and legal practice doesn't reflect that? Why is that? So, what is very interesting is that we turn to our own Makorot. There we see that exactly this issue comes up. I would say in a little bit of a different context, which is it seems to be religious luck that we're talking about. Or you could say religious stroke moral, because of course some of the mitzvot of the Torah have to do with morality. Don't murder, don't steal, etc. Some have nothing to do with morality on the face of it. What kind of food you eat? Well, that might be moral, environmental consideration, whatever. There are plenty, tefillin, etc. There are plenty of mitzvot. That's one way of construing roughly the difference between chukim and mishpatim. Mishpatim is described in the Gemara's laws we would have worked out for ourselves, even if the Torah hadn't been given. We'd know that it's not good to kill each other or steal, etc. But we would never have come up with shatnez or paraduma. We would never have come up with any of those things. Those are chukim. So there is a distinction between the two. So some areas of halakha can argue it's religious stroke moral. Other areas it's just religious, and we'll see in the text we're going to look at in the next 3 hours or so. We'll see.
That's true.
We'll see. Yeah, then we'll see that some are religious, some are moral, some prosaic. Yes, Sarah.
Yeah. I don't know how luck comes into this whole story, either on a philosophical level or even a theological level. How are you presenting luck in either case? I'm not understanding.
Right. Okay. Fine. So let's define luck as something beyond the control of the person, of the agent, of the person who's done the action. So the driver who is careless but doesn't cause any accident is lucky. But the driver who doesn't is the driver who does cause an accident is unlucky. It's unlucky, and it was beyond. And let's define luck as beyond the control. How things turned out, whether a child ran into the road at the wrong moment, is a matter of luck, matter beyond their control. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense, but I don't understand theologically how that ends.
Theologically, we haven't done any theology yet.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah, we'll come to theologically how to. Yeah, so that's a very good point actually, and that's kind of session 3. Yeah.
Just speak with it out. Just speak with the microphone. No, he's wearing a microphone. It's okay.
Don't we have to define this in terms of the individual as opposed to the group? Because when we're talking about what we can control, for instance, in a democracy, we are a group of individuals that have decided to structure our society so that we have incremental leadership and a government, and we may not feel that we are in control of what our government, what some of these steps of organization of what is done, yet we have elected them, and we may feel that
Yeah.
at some point what is done in
Yeah.
our name is
Right.
morally wrong.
Right.
So I think one has to differentiate here between being the individual oneself
Yeah.
or
Part of it.
in a societal or group sense.
Right. Right. That's very true. I think that's very true. A group can have moral luck. Group of people who voted for a candidate who turns out to be terrible, which will never happen. Would be there's some moral luck in how things turn out, which are beyond their control. Yeah, okay. So you could have moral luck at them.
But I would also argue in a scientific way between cause and fact. One knows that where there's a ball on a sidewalk, there might be a child.
Yeah.
And the ball may run into the street, therefore the child may run into the street. These are things by experience and by knowledge of what cause and effect we can anticipate.
Yeah.
So in terms of this luck idea, it's almost a question of how far you want to analyze the situation.
Yeah. I understand. But you're always going to come up with it. So we'd be quicker to blame a driver who knocked a kid down when there was a ball within clear view and he should have anticipated that the child was going to run in. But you'll always have cases where luck is involved. It's child just steps out and you're always going to be able to construct.
But I think the point I'm trying to make is we're using this word luck, but if you were trying to analyze it scientifically, wouldn't it be more the statistics of cause and effect? Perhaps I'm being a stickler.
Probability.
Yeah, there are probabilities, but again, it's still okay. But okay, so you're driving in such a way that there's 30% probability that you'll cause an accident, 70% you won't. But it's which of the 30 groups? So really, it's still a matter of luck.
Tossing a coin.
Still
I
beyond your control.
understand exactly
Still
what you're
beyond your
saying.
control.
I'm just trying to be
Still
a
beyond-
little.
I understand. Yeah.
Because people were asking about. Sorry, I don't know your name, but you were asking about what does this term mean?
Yes.
Yeah. You're still going to. You can reduce it, but you're still going to not be able to eliminate cases where that comes in.
It's often we use the term. We use the mazel tov to people who are experiencing simchas in their life. And in ancient times, I think the concept was that it was related to the stars, which is something that we now think is about a Zara. We don't think of this as controlling our lives. But in ancient times, that was a very important concept. And how under what star you might have been born under. So I'm just saying that the terminology has changed. And
absolutely. Sure. Mazel, which when we say mazel now, we mean just pure luck. We're not referring to the constellations. Which in the times of the Gemara, for example, they thought was scientific. It was scientific, like a scientific. Yeah, but that's very true. The meaning of luck changes, but kind of using luck as that shorthand for factors beyond control. Okay. So good. Thank you for the stimulating questions. Okay. So now 35 minutes in, we get to a Torah source. So it's a very fascinating Gemara and Kiddushin, Pei Aleph on the bet you've got here, and this is kind of what we call in England. We used to call it, when I was brought up, X certificate. Now they call it 18. I don't know what they call it in Israel or the States. Films, movies that you don't take kids to see.
R-rated.
Right. Okay. This is okay. So this is one of those Gemara. So Rabbi Chia bar Ashi, you've got this on the sheet. Rabbi Chia bar Ashi aviragil kol itan davar nafal la'apei. Rabbi Chia bar Ashi Amora, whenever he would daven, he was accustomed very regularly davar nafal la'apei, when he fell on his face in prayer. We call tachnon on the filat apayim. Here it's a broader sense. Hava'ama, he would say, "Harachaman yatzilenu mi'yetzer hara." May Hashem rescue me from the yetzer hara, from the evil inclination. Yom achad shmatei devitu. One day his wife heard him saying this prayer. Amran, she says to herself, why is he bothering to make this prayer? He has been separate from me physically for a long time. So why is he asking Hashem for protection from the Yetzer when he's such a tzaddik or an ascetic at this level? Why is he saying that? Yom Achad Kagaris begins it. One day he was studying in the garden. So there you go. So one thing you learn from this is it's legitimate to learn in the garden.
Yeah,
Okay.
or not.
Or not, actually. Yes. Very true. Yeah. Yeah. What might happen if you're learning in the garden?
Leads to mixed dancing.
Right. Kashtan Nafsha. So she, his wife, dressed herself up, adorned herself, and she walked past him so that he would notice her. Amale Manat. So he said to his wife, not recognizing her, "Who are you?" Amara Ana Charuta, I'm Charuta, apparently was a famous prostitute, and I'm coming back from my day's work. Tave. So he propositioned her. Amra later, she said to him, if you want me to make an appointment for you after the day's work is finished, you need to give me something. Aiti neheli lahach rumana, go and bring me that rumana, rimon. Go and get me the pomegranate from the pomegranate tree. We were okay. We only got lemon tree in our garden. It's a good outcome. So we're very excited in England. They're going to try and grow something in the garden. So she said to him, "Get me the pomegranates payment. The it's on the top of the tree. Shiva Azil Aitin Hale." So he jumped up on the tree and he got it for her, and they had relations, which the Gemara doesn't say explicitly. It's obvious from the context. Kiata levating, when Rav Chia Ba'ashi came home, Habakashavi Davitu Tanura. His wife was lighting fire in the oven, Salik B'Kayata B'Gavei, and he went and sat inside it. In other words, trying to kill himself. Amara later, his wife said to him, "My high, what are you doing?" Amala hachi v'hachi avamasa. So he owned up. He said to her, "I was sitting learning in the garden, and this woman came along, and what happens. Amrale ana havai." So she said to him, "It was me. It was me."
And then he has the word sin. I don't believe you.
Said, "I had no idea it was. It was me, and therefore you haven't done anything wrong." In actual fact, and this would be important for when we try and next session to try and distinguish between cases. Actually, would end up that he's done a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah of honor. It's a relationship with the wife at a permissible time. So actually, he may have been intending to do something. The cases where someone's intending to do something wrong, and you end up with a neutral result or no result. But here you end up with a good result. Very interesting. I have to distinguish the cases. But here we end up with actually a good result in religious terms. So he's done a mitzvah. So she says, "Get out of the oven. You're fine." Didn't believe her until she gave him signs. I don't know what they said to each other. Whenever she knows.
The pomegranate.
Oh, the pomegranate. Right, I see. Why doesn't he say rimon there? It says simane.
Yeah.
Simane in the plural. It could be the pomegranate, or it could be.
Siman Rosh
It was
Hashanah.
like Leah and Rachel.
Exactly.
It's ambiguous. I think it's ambiguous. It could be the pomegranate.
Different story.
It could be,
Yeah.
it could be the
She
pomegranate.
lit 2 fires that day.
Anyways, okay. So Tim might probably what they said to each other. Anyway, he was in no doubt that she persuaded him it was her. Amala, he said to her, Ana mihale sure kavale. I may have been lucky in how things turned out. It was you. But my intention, what counts morally, my intention was to sleep with a prostitute. And not only did I also another distinction we'll see further on in the course, not only did I have the intention to do something wrong, I acted on it. I acted on the intention to do something wrong, and it just must. And luck, thank God, it was just you. As it were.
You say that?
So, yeah, and that tzaddik, Rabbi Harris, was so troubled by this that he fasted until he died. Or tamita, by that death, not entirely clear what that means, but the straightforward interpretation is he died from fasting. He was fasting too much. So, objectively, here Rabbi Harris does a mitzvah of honor. Relations with his wife results from his intention, but nevertheless he judges himself extremely severely for his intention. So it's moral luck. He will not take advantage of his moral luck or his religious luck. But here's one of the crossover things that you call interesting. So what we would have called lack of fidelity immoral without any hesitation until about the time of when I was born in the 60s. Now people would say, "Oh, it's a religious prohibition." Okay. So let's say this is.
But at least you weren't a Nazi.
It wasn't a Nazi. So that was both.
His wife said,
it's a moral. He did something morally, or certainly did something. Zonai certainly did something that was forbidden in halacha, but he was lucky. He won't take advantage of the luck. He judges himself as harshly as if it had not been his wife and it had been the woman that he thought it was. Okay, the Gemara continues now. The Tanya, we learned in the Baraita, Isha Feram Bashem Yislach La. Yeah, so the Gemara, it is in Matot, right, where the husband has right and the father have rights over the wife's or daughter's Nadarim, over the oaths, the promises. They make complicated halachot, but basically, in some circumstances, the husband can be made for the neder of his wife. He can annul her vow. So the Torah says in the beginning of Matot, the Torah says, her husband has annulled this vow, Hashem yislach la, and Hashem will forgive her. So we'd ask, well, why does Hashem need to forgive her? If her husband, she made a vow not to do something and she broke it, the vow. If her husband has annulled the vow, then she hasn't done anything wrong. So why does the Torah say that Hashem will forgive her? Why does she need forgiveness for breaking a vow if the vow was cancelled by the husband? But so the Gemara says, what's the Torah speaking about here? But Shashin Adraba Nazir. The woman made a vow to be a Nazir. Okay, yeah, so Isha, the Torah explicitly says either a man or a woman can voluntarily take on the prohibitions of Naziritehood, then the Siddur of Nassau. So a woman took on the prohibitions of Naziritehood. She says, okay, I'm not going to come into contact with a dead body or drink, etc. For cut hair, takes on that vow. She said this to herself in the hall, and her husband is in the room off to the hall. B'shama Bala, and her husband heard. They fela, and he, unbeknown to her, he says, "I'm Mayfair." Whatever I don't know what the formula is, but he says the formula to be Mayfair to annul her vow. She had no idea. Something amazing, and she then, thinking that she is a Nazirah, goes and drinks wine and comes into contact. Of course, she breaks the conditions of being a Nazir, but in fact she is okay. She's okay. So Gemara says she requires slicha. Why does she require slicha? So the straightforward way of understanding the Gemara is this is religious, I think, definitely, rather than moral. We're now in the area of ritual. She has religious luck, parallel to moral luck. Her husband happens to, but she hasn't done any avera. She hasn't broken a vow because her husband cancelled the vow. But in terms of her intention, and again, she acted on it. She had the intention to break the vow. She acted on it and drank wine. And that's why, apparently, she needs slicha. Hashem yislach la. Because even though she didn't technically do anything wrong, she did do something wrong in terms of the intention. The Torah doesn't let her take full advantage of her moral luck or religious luck. That makes sense. So you see how it's parallel to the moral luck.
Is it the same slicha that she needs if she was a full Nazarite?
It's a good question. So I think yes. So that's a good question.
Like, is it manslaughter?
Right. Yeah, that is a good question. I think there is. So I think if I remember correctly, there's a machloket about what happens. Different views about how severe it is. But the plain understanding, it seems to be that she hasn't contravened the Nazar. It's kind of just a plain shot. What seems to be Hashem Yislach like Ben Adam Makro. She hasn't done anything that the Beis Din can charge her with, but she needs divine forgiveness. She's done something wrong. I have got lots of other makorot on it, which but and I can't quite write. As far as I remember, it's a machloket exactly how severe it is if she broke the vow and practiced without knowing versus actually having done. That's a good question. Okay,
but basically, this source is disapproving of using a legal loophole.
Well, actually, she didn't consciously use a loophole. She was conscious as far as her intentions when she's breaking the din completely. She's not using a loophole. She wouldn't have cared apparently if the husband hadn't annulled that. She was still in the zero. She'd still have gone ahead and run the wine. It's just she's lucky. You with me? She's just lucky that the husband hadn't. So it's not when we say using a loophole, that tends to be conscious. So using a loophole, yeah.
She was unaware.
She was unaware. Oh, yeah. She was unaware that it was okay. Yeah.
So what you're
It's a
saying,
bit like a loophole. It's the same kind of, yeah.
So what you're saying is she was morally responsible, even though halachically by the law, by Jewish law, of course, her husband had made the had annulled the vow, but because she's still morally negligent. There's still a requirement for her.
So I would actually not. I would say this is a case of religious luck, as it were, parallel to moral luck. Well, yeah. So she actually still has done something religiously wrong, for which she needs Hashem's forgiveness, but she hasn't broken she had luck in not breaking the halacha fully. Because the intention was bad. What she did was actually fine because Okay. And the Gemara continues with Rabbi Akiva. When Rabbi Akiva came to learning this verse, Hashem Yislach La, in Parshat Matot, Havabachi would cry. Amar, he would say, Umami shenikaven lechol basar chazir, ve'ala biyado basar taleh, Amra Torah tzicha kapara uslicha. If someone, he gives another example now, someone intended to eat a piece of chazir, and instead he reached out mistakenly for the kosher lamb. So you're at a function, you're at an interfaith reception, and there's kosher food and there's non-kosher food next to it. So I'm going to put my rabbi hat back on for a second and say, don't eat there. It's too risky. Anyway, kosher food next to each other. And you think, I've always wanted to know what pork chocolate tastes like. This is my chance. No one will think it's the kosher food. You're reaching out, not you, person reaches out for the pork, and some nudnik, and the Jewish world is not lacking in nudniks, comes along and jogs your hands. It happens a lot. You notice that. Holding a drink, something. So someone jogged your hand. Sorry, this stuff's 30 years ago. So you reach you knocked your hand and you pick up a piece of meat, and it's the kosher meat. And you eat the kosher meat. You say there's absolutely nothing wrong. Yeah, let's say in this case it's neutral, so it's not Shabbat, it's not Yom Tov, it's not Sudat Mitzvah. This is just a normal day, and when you are allowed to have kosher meat. So he did a davar reshut. You did something which is entirely permissible, but it's not. But it's not. Entirely permissible. But you intended to do something wrong. So Rabbi Akiva says here, Amra Torah tzlicha kapara tzlicha. So he says the Torah says that you would need kapara tzlicha, atonement and forgiveness. He adds kapara here, Rabbi Akiva, and also so Rabbi Akiva is obviously taking the Nazarite case as like a binyanav, as a kind of a principle. It's not just that particular example. It's any case where you had the full intention of doing something, and here we're in ritual, religiously in kashrut. When you are doing your full intention to do something wrong, you ended up quite by accident not doing anything wrong, so you still need a kapara. And again, it sounds like, go back to your house, it sounds from the plain sense. It's not as if you actually, but you don't think you've got away scot-free. Don't think you need slicha. You can't do that. You can't rely on the fact that every time your will fails you, that someone's going to come along and make sure you don't do anything wrong. So if Rabbi Akiva says someone who just intended to eat the non-kosher and through sheer luck, beyond their control, didn't eat the non-kosher, how much worse, how much the more so, kal v'chomer, someone who intended to eat the pork and succeeded in eating the pork, how much more so do they say? Oh, interesting. So now we've got more of an answer to your question, in one respect. So it's kal v'chomer. So Rabbi Akiva says, although the person who intended to eat the non-kosher meat and ate the kosher meat by accident needs slicha kapara, it's not as bad as succeeding, even though it's beyond their control, because it's kal v'chomer. If someone who just intended to eat the non-kosher meat and ate the kosher meat needs slicha kapara, then how much more so than someone who actually did? But it's the only difference between the two is luck. Yet kal v'chomer, said Rabbi Akiva, it's worse if they ended up eating it. Then it's worse. Then it's worse. So there's a clear ranking there of the two.
Is it worse? Is it worse in the result though, or is it just that because in the first case you couldn't avoid consequence, you still don't avoid it in the second case? Does it mean that's my question? Does it mean that the result is worse? Or is it just that because you're guilty in point A,
right?
Then even more so, you're guilty in point B, but there's no actual difference in the outcome.
Right.
There's
no difference.
There's no greater. There's no greater.
Oh yeah. So I think again, what's the kal v'chomer? The kal v'chomer is how much more so would he need slicha v'kapara?
Yes.
Presumably, yeah. That's so. Therefore, so it's not just that that's what they've done is worse. But that, even though that was a matter of pure luck. So it's interesting. So Rabbi Akiva here seems to tease it out. He seems to be addressing both sides of the dilemma. You're lucky and you didn't eat treif. You're not going to get away scot-free with that. But it's not as bad. So that's the intuition. But it's not as bad as you actually ate it, even though it's the same. So it seems to be both sides. I've seen both sides of it here, which is very interesting. Okay. And a final Gemara for today. This is a really interesting case. Fishing on Shabbat. So someone goes fishing on Shabbat. It's against the din. Shchita, one of the avot melacha, and spreads a net out to capture fish. And lo and behold, with the fish comes out a child who'd been drowning in the river. So what's the din? It's a machloket. Rabba amar patur, Rabba amar chaya. So Rabba says he's exempt from punishment for he hasn't broken Shabbat because the child came up. Well, he has, but he's patur. He's exempt from any punishment. Rava says no, he's not. He's broken Shabbat because he was fishing. Rabba amar patur. Rabba says he's exempt from punishment. Zil batam ma'asav. Look at the action. Look at the result. Look at what happened. Look at the result. What happened was that he saved the child. For Rava amachayev zil batam ma'asav. Rava says no. Look at what's inside. Hashem yirala leiva. Look inside Look at his intention. He intended to go fishing on Shabbat. And Mazel now is being fated as a hero. Actually, he was just fishing on Shabbat. Look at what he did, and therefore he should be chayav. I mean, legally subject to punishment for what he did. So they appear here, Rabbah and Rava, to be arguing about moral luck or religious luck, whether he broke Shabbat or not. Rava factors out luck and focuses exclusively on the intention. Yeah. So that's whereas Rabbah allows luck in the guise of the unintended outcome, namely the rescue of the child. They seem to be arguing exactly about moral luck. Rava, interestingly, would concede what happens in a case where the discussion of the Gemara, in the discussion of the Gemara, this question is asked: what happens if he goes fishing? Only a child comes out, no fish. So what would happen there? So there, everyone agrees that he would be exempt from punishment, despite the bad intention. Therefore, it seems that Rava doesn't consider a person liable to punishment merely for an intention to break the law, even for anti.
Question is if he can eat the fish.
Right. Yeah. Okay, right. Or can someone else eat the fish? Right. Yeah. So interesting, the halacha in this case actually follows a view of Rabbah, that it's the result rather than the intention. And the final is that Rambam actually brings this down the halacha in the Mishnah Torah, back to Fiola's first class, which I'm sorry I missed. Hilchot Shabbat, chapter 260, just at the end there, a bit that's underlined, the kaven la'alot dagim v'he'ela dagim v'tinot. So it's gone fishing on Shabbat. He just intends to get fish, to catch fish, and he gets saves the child as well. Patu, he's patu. So we pass with the lenient opinion, with Rabbah. He's patu afilu lo shama shetava. Even if he had not heard that there was a child in drowning in the river. Even if it was complete, like, because even if he can't say, oh well, actually I was trying to get the child, he hadn't heard about it. Since the result was that something good happened, and here again, it's distinguished between what the outcomes are like. It's not just a neutral outcome like eating kosher meat on a normal day, which is neither a mitzvah nor a prohibition. Tavar should. Here he does something fantastic. He saves the child's life. And Rabbah says that's what we're focusing on, and therefore he's patur from punishment for breaking Shabbat. Okay.
But in the other examples, didn't we say that they are still held liable for the intention?
Yes, we did. We did say that. That's right. We said liable for intention in the other cases. That's absolutely right. So here,
seems like this guy should be in trouble.
Yeah, seems like he should be in trouble, and it could be. Here's, of course, the Gemara doesn't discuss what the situation is Klape Shammai, and it wasn't just decide. I mean, presumably he certainly needs divine forgiveness for the Shabbat intention.
But this is a different example because something positive came out. It wasn't a matter of just not something negative, like not eating pig.
Yes, but in the case of Rabbi Barashi, also something positive came out. I'm not on the mitzvah for relations with his wife, even though it's not on the same scale as saving a life. Right. But it was a very good outcome.
Saved the life. He just got lucky.
He got lucky and saved a life. And it seems to be there in and what I find fascinating is it's many other Rabbi and Rava arguing about this. Luck is right at the center of what they're arguing about, and they're anticipating a philosophical debate which is still current. So we've just introduced the issue with some basic philosophical texts and some basic makorot, and we will go into more detail, please God, in the coming 2 sessions, and then on to other issues in morality and the design.
Question.
Go on, sorry.
Okay. So
Injury type.
injury type. So somebody could decide that they want to get a fish. And they go and they know this story. So they can mess around with their own intention and head and say, well, actually, what I really want to do is go and see if I can fish a child. And I might get lucky and fish a fish. But my intention is save a child.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. So
that's a far reach.
Yeah, right. I guess that would be, well, clearly that would be better than just intending to go and fish. Yeah, I mean, what you're pointing out is important. So there are gradations in intention. You can have self-deception as well.
Well, precisely.
You can have self-deception. You know, he really wants to go fishing, and he's convincing himself that he's trying to save a child if he knew that there was one in there. So you absolutely can get gradations. It's not you get all sorts of areas of grey in the mental life. Yeah.
In the Jewish sources, all of the intentions were bad or against halacha, but in the truck driver's case, his intention was neutral or good. Yeah. He was never intending to run over a child.
That's right.
So it's not parallel.
So it's not parallel. So we need a case in the Jewish sources where the person's intention is neutral or good, but something bad turns out, and we will see sources like that. We've got next. There are sources like that. Absolutely. So we need to distinguish between kinds of cases and then look at it. But this was absolutely right. But anyway, that's the introduction to the issue. And thank you for the great questions. Thank you very much.
Slides.